Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's been a very long time since I uploaded anything on this channel. Don't have any excuses, but going forward, I hope that I can upload, and I will upload a lot more. So if you like what I got going on, stay. There's more to come. With that being said, let's get into the book I finished this month that I want to talk about. It's called An Artist of the Floating World by Kazuo Ishiguro. What can I say about this book? Honestly, I picked it up because it had a pretty cool cover. It's an orange cover, and I'll kind of put it up on the screen for you so you can see. That kind of appealed to me, and it's a pretty easy read. I found I didn't have any struggles like getting over any pages, didn't really have to like move back and see what certain words or stuff meant, maybe a few, but overall I felt like it was a really accessible book. And if you just want to go ahead and like read something light, I would recommend it. But with that being said, there's things I want to talk about. You know, it got me thinking, especially after a few days of, thinking of. So, this book was pretty boring for the most part because there isn't anything exciting happening in this book. It's literally this old man called Ono just thinking about his past and thinking about how his past could affect his present in a way. And it's just him reminiscing, talking to people, family members, a lot of dialogue. That's what I wasn't a big fan of. I think after reading this book, I realized I'm really not into books where they have heavy dialogue. Well, so I guess that's a plus about reading this book. Stay away from books with heavy dialogue. But it got me thinking, and the way I want to break down my thinking is maybe think about it in themes. So the first theme I want to get into is the theme about memory. This book is heavy, heavy, heavy on memory. The main character, Ono, all he does is remember about his past, and just thinks about how cool and amazing his youth was. So he's like an artist, right? I think he's a painter, if I'm not mistaken. And as a painter, he likes to indulge in grandeur of himself, which I feel like as an artist, you would. And if I was somewhat of that caliber, I think I would as well. But anyway, I think the book does a really good job to show how memory is a very fickle thing, in a sense that what we think is our real memory could not necessarily be the reality. It could be fragments of the reality, but it's not the whole reality. And the book does a really clever job with that because it starts off with him. And before I get any further, there's spoilers. Nothing major, I would say. The book is like, God no, like I think it's like almost 200 pages. So I'm not gonna spill anything crazy. And if you're okay with that, you can continue listening on to my I guess review, or I guess I don't know what you would call this, but anyway, he starts off in the book. This is the main character, Ono, as being very confident in his memory. But as the book continues, he becomes less and less confident because not only his family, especially his daughter, his colleagues start questioning events or questioning him about is he remembering things the correct way. And I would highlight one part which kind of stood out to me, and I think it was like towards the end where Ono is having a chat with his son-in-law, and this son-in-law he had a lot of worry about this marriage because one of the biggest and only main issue, I wouldn't say only, but the biggest issue was trying to get one of his daughter married. I think the other one was married. And he was kind of reminiscing and saying like how it was such a, weird time where I was being so careful because of my past. And, it's strange because he's saying this now to the son-in-law about how he found it strange that the son-in-law's father and him were both in the same art world, lived in the same neighborhood, but he was a, I don't know, art critic and I was an artist, so I'm surprised we weren't that close, but we weren't. And the son-in-law is kind of looking at him, is like, dude, my father wasn't that, like, he barely knew you, kind of thing. And then Ono was like, nah, man, he must have known me. I was a big deal back in the day, and I've met him a few times, and he also said as much. And then the son-in-law was like, no, I think you're remembering like incorrectly or some shit. So it kind of shows you that, especially as you get older, I'm getting older myself, and I'm always curious about like things in my own personal life where I'm like, oh man, this certain event went this exact same way, but I'm starting to realize, or I've always known that the people who were also shared that same memory probably had a different view of it in some sense. So it shows you, as much as we like to think our memories are concrete, it's not. I think our minds, especially as they get older, I feel like our minds kind of place us in a narrative that kind of makes us the good person. It makes us the top dog. And the second theme I want to get into is how we take responsibility, especially if you're someone with power or status. As Ono was an artist when he was younger, so the book kind of takes place during the Second World War and just about the end of it as well. And Ono was a pretty big deal in the art world during the Second World War, and so he felt like, what, instead of being an artist of the floating world, I want to be an artist of the material world. And so he got into, promoting nationalism and, all that business that took place in Japan during the Second World War with the Chinese and Americans. And he, there's one aspect of him which I kind of admire, in the sense that he doesn't really shy away of the work he produced during that period that supported the war effort, because he felt like as an artist you should never kind of bash your good work that you produced during that period, regardless if it had a negative effect, and how next, or I guess later generations will probably look at it as like in disgust. But you as an artist put in the work, the time, the effort, the sweat, the tear into creating that. And so take it, just take it. Whatever criticism that comes your way, take it, And I really appreciate that as someone who's always about, regardless of what you do it if that's what you believe in, but don't shy away from responsibility. And I guess he, in a sense, doesn't run away from his responsibility, but at the same time connected to the memory, his understanding of his responsibility, or how much of an impact he had, wasn't as big as he thought it was. So I found that pretty interesting in itself. The last thing I want to touch on this book is ego. Ego is a hell of a drug. I'll tell you right now, and especially if you're an artist, especially if you're an artist that had some praise, because throughout the book he always talks about like how I got this award, or I was able to kind of meet this, I was a student of so and so artist. He was pretty full of himself, and I guess he kind of worries about how his big deal, which is also connected to his past, could affect his present. And I think we humans or people in general, we kind of we overplay our impact. I think sometimes we have to give ourselves some grace in the sense that we think like, oh, because of what I've done, I must have caused this massive damage to others, and whether it's like through my reputation or through my action. And in movies and books, I feel like we get mostly the opposite of people who don't really recognize the damage they've done. And that's more serious, to be honest, and more interesting if we're being real. But I feel like we also need to hear the other side, which is that, hey, what you did wasn't that big of a deal. People are not thinking about it that deeply. And I think his daughter, I forget her name, but forgive me, but I actually liked her personality a lot because the way she, because she was like, felt like she was the only person in the book that can actually go toe to toe with him, like verbally, having a contest with him. And I felt like she would always kind of come off top. She would always put him in his place and it's like, hey, dude, it's not that deep. And I found that very refreshing because I tend to think of myself, well, my ego sometimes could get out of control. And I do appreciate people around me who do, put me in my place. Artists need that. I don't need you to kind of look at Kanye West as an example and other people in that ilk. Regardless, I really enjoy that book, and if you see it in a bookstore, if the cover jumps out at you, this artist, he doesn't need an introduction, right? He may never let